hope I learned something. I hope I learned something. I hope I learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny we learned something. I hope we learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the daily All Hat No Kettle News Rodeo. I'm your host. Hat's very subdued today as I am flat out exhausted. Flat out exhausted. I did not sleep, as you all well know, Monday night into Tuesday morning. I did get a decent amount of sleep last night. In fact, I slept really well, better than in quite a while. But one night is not enough to make up for a full day of being awake. So it's not going to be a full 2-hour show today. I'm going to do a little over an hour. It's going to be on all 4 platforms, but no after show today. I do have a story, though, that might get me kicked off YouTube. We'll get to that in a little bit. But what do we got to cover today? Well, first off, breaking news from this morning. Bill Cosby, by now, could be out of jail. Prison. Could be out of prison. His sexual assault conviction was overturned due to a previous ruling by a DA back in the early to mid 2000s. We'll talk about that. Also, the NSA said Tucker Carlson is not a subject of our being investigated at the moment. Things like that. I have the tweet from the from the NSA CCS regarding Tucker's allegations, and some really good responses to that. Some very interesting takes on it. Also, Biden slipping in the polls yet again, especially among Democrats. Some certain things there. And let's see, what was the other one I wanted to do? Where is it here? I'll see if we'll get to it later. I'm starting to fall apart. I don't want to get to start complicating things too much. All right, so let's go ahead and just get into it, instead of me blobbing around. First off, as always, our Babylon Bee bookend. This is one on the left from our politics section. Concerns raised about election integrity after Biden wins 80 million votes for New York City mayor. And here we have a picture of our clueless leader with an insert of people at actual ballot booths. We'll see what happens here. Dateline New York City, New York. Some critics are raising concerns over election integrity after early results from the New York City mayoral election showed Biden winning by 80 million votes. Said local man Joseph Joey, yeah, something about that seems off. Are we sure all those election people really know what they're doing, or that they're not all corrupt and stuff? Close quote. The FBI is now investigating Joey after his far-right insurrectionist comments questioning the sanctity of America's holy elections. According to sources, Biden won the mayoral race after election officials accidentally counted the 80 million Biden ballots they had stashed away in a special secret place reserved for extra Biden ballots. They have apologized for the unfortunate error. Quote, "We are working hard to sort this out and hope to have this all fixed soon," said NYC election official Tony Palmero. In the meantime, please just try to remember who you voted for, just in case. Close quote. Babylon Bee, everyone. By the way, I don't think I have it pulled up, but pretty hilarious. The New York City mayoral race, the primary, the results won't be out until mid next month. Next month starts tomorrow, mid-July. Remember, New York's used rank voting for the first time, and they have no idea what they're doing. And they counted some 130,000 test votes into the actual vote tally when they released the vote totals last night, and put Eric Adams suddenly in a very slim lead after he had been leading by quite a bit. And like any good Republican, Eric Adams immediately questioned those. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, he's a Democrat. But nonetheless, he questioned those results, and New York City Elections Board came back and said, oh, actually, just kidding. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. So, again, we won't know anything about a very important election until weeks after it was concluded. What are you going to do? All right, so my personal conceit, the market. Bit of an up day, although mixed results all over. The Dow was up just over 0.6%, closing at 34,500 and change. The S&P 500 was up just a tick over 0.1%. The NASDAQ retreated 0.17%, now sitting above 14,500 though, so still in record territory. Gold is advancing 0.5%. Crude oil marching its way towards $74 a barrel, now sitting at $73.51 per barrel of West Texas Intermediate Sweet Crude. And Bitcoin again flailing around in the mid 35,000s, currently sitting at almost exactly 35,000 per coin at 35,055 and change. Moving right along, as I teased at the beginning, Bill Cosby is, if hasn't happened by now, it will soon be a free man, as the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled today that his sexual assault conviction is vacated. Two lower courts upheld upheld the conviction, but the Pennsylvania Supreme Court upheld the appeal. It seems that back in 2005, a district attorney foresaw difficulties, close quote, with Cosby accuser Andrea Constand's credibility as a witness, based in part upon her decision not to file a complaint properly. Again, that's quoting the DA. So this is his name is Bruce Castor, And he also, quote, determined that a prosecution would be frustrated because there was no corroborating forensic evidence and because testimony from other potential claimants against Cosby likely was inadmissible under governing laws of evidence. That's the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, saying that basically Bruce Castor had determined that prosecution would not be feasible, and therefore the case should not be prosecuted, but then it was reinvigorated, reestablished later on, and that was illegal. Castor concluded, ultimately, quote, there was insufficient credible and admissible evidence upon which any charge against Mr. Cosby related to the Constand incident could be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The ruling bars any retrial. Other than Constand, a number of women have publicly accused Cosby of assault or inappropriate behavior over the years, with some even alleging that he drugged them. Cosby has maintained his innocence throughout. So Bill Cosby, 83 years old, has been in prison for what, 3 years now, I think? Yes, he was convicted in 18. Yeah, he's been in prison for about 3 years. It's amazing he didn't die in prison. It really is. But, I don't know how you feel about that. Personally, I thought the cases were really weak. I know there were a lot of people who came out, but as we saw from the Me Too craze, it didn't take much blood in the water to create a swarm of Me Too sharks. So I'm not saying Bill Cosby is innocent. I just don't think that there was really enough evidence properly admitted to convict him. But that is my take on it, not anyone else's I would expect. Okay. Now, normally when I do Gab TV, the Gab TV block, and hello Gab TV, I do the Law and Order block, and as you can see, we just did a pretty big Law and Order story with Bill Cosby. Now we're getting into the meat of what I usually do, which is lawlessness, complete lawlessness. And this story from justthenews.com absolutely took my breath away. It came out just a little bit before I was starting to put the final touches on the show, and so I shoehorned it in here. The title says it all, and this is written by Ava Castelli, again for justthenews.com. Naval Academy mom fatally shot while dropping off son in Annapolis. This is the third homicide in Annapolis this year. Folks, this is downtown Annapolis in this picture here. This is a very old place. Very old place. And it's the home of the Naval Academy. Midshipmen graduate from, or I should say, midshipmen attend the Naval Academy, and then they graduate. They're naval officers. But a lot of the technical schools are in other places of the country. There's a big naval technical school just south of us at Great Lakes Naval Base, where my mother-in-law worked for years, and fascinating there. She was a government employee for quite some time. She met my father-in-law. He was a trumpet player in the Army band at Fort Leavenworth, and he was supposed to play that night at a dance, but he was able to beg off his role. He had someone else take over, and he met my mother-in-law at the dance. She was a typist for basically the publication arm of the U.S. Army. So she would type all types of technical manuals and things like that. She had a high security clearance because she was seeing actual battle plans, things like that. Strategic plans. And they met at the dance and were married quite quickly afterwards. Picasso's and I dated for weeks before I proposed to her. I met her on Thanksgiving, the evening of Thanksgiving, 1989, and I asked her to marry me that Christmas in the back of a car. Very romantic, very romantic. I'm a buyer, not a shopper. But anyway, Annapolis, you would think that this is a safe place. You would think this is a safe place, and it turns out this mom, her and her husband had just dropped off their son, who is a brand new inductee into the Naval Academy, and she was sitting on the patio of her hotel on West Street in downtown Annapolis. And there was a shooting very nearby. The shooter missed the two people they were aiming at and struck and killed this woman. Her name was Michelle Jordan Cummings from Houston. Imagine being in Houston, a very high crime city, and getting shot to death while sitting on your hotel's patio in Annapolis, Maryland. I'd say the irony of this is pretty palpable. The cops right now don't have a suspect. There is a whole $2,000 reward out for information that leads to an arrest or indictment. $2,000. Cummings, 57, and her husband were visiting for the induction of their son Leonard into the service academy and had been on the patio with another couple at the time of the shooting. Folks, let me show you something here. Let me show you something. This is my my Spartan armor, level 3A, NIJ certified ballistic armor. It'll stop any handgun round. It'll slow down a rifle round. I wear it all the time because of stuff like this. I highly recommend Spartan armor. They have a lot of great stuff. That is their low profile armor for it doesn't have all the tactical MOLLE connections and things on it that scream body armor. I can wear it and people look at it and they assume it's a back brace. And if they ask me what is that, I say it's a back brace, and it doesn't go any further than that. So, not saying you should get one. I'm just saying I have one. I can wear I wear extra large shirts, and all I have to do is wear the next size up, and the clothing fits right over the top of it with no trouble whatsoever. You can't even see it when you do that. All right, moving right along. So continuing with the Law and Order block, people in search of criminals as opposed to solving crimes. The Manhattan District Attorney, as we all know, has been investigating Trump and the Trump Organization for years. We've all heard many times how Trump's tax returns have been under basic constant audit for decades, and they've never found anything. So after 3 years of digging, including having the entire resources of the state's AG behind them, because you remember New York State Attorney General Letitia James ran for the office on the promise that she would put Trump in jail. That is a direct quote. She said a number of times that when she gets in office, she will put Trump behind bars. And we have been hearing from the media over and over again that the Manhattan DA has the goods on Trump, that he's going down. There were all these talks about inflating and deflating property values based on whether or not you were looking for a loan or you were paying taxes. And I have said many times that is a very common occurrence in the real estate business, but I did not make this point before. I'll make it now. That's a very common occurrence among people who do their own applications. When it comes to high-end corporate matters, you do it by the book because you hire the best people to do the best work. Now, Trump may not have had all the best people in the White House, but he certainly has had a long time in the real estate business to put the best people together for his business. And turns out, again, everything we heard from the mainstream media about how Trump was in trouble, how this was going to happen, that was going to happen, turned out to be completely false. You may remember just yesterday the Manhattan DA announced that there would be no charges against Trump, criminal or otherwise, but that there would be charges against a couple Trump Organization people. So the results are in. I've got this archived article from the Wall Street Journal written by Corinne Ramey. And it's really quite. Here's the meat of it. The Trump Organization and Alan Weisselberg, the company's longtime chief financial officer, are expected to face charges related to allegedly evading taxes on fringe benefits. For months, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and New York State Attorney's General Office have been investigating whether Mr. Weisselberg and other employees illegally avoided paying taxes on perks, such as cars, apartments, and private school tuition that they received from the Trump Organization. If prosecutors could show the Trump Organization and its executives systematically avoided paying taxes, they could file more serious charges alleging a scheme. Okay, so here it is. They've got them on minor tax charges, not claiming taxes on fringies. Wow. Crime of the century, folks. Crime of the century. How many millions of dollars have these two respective law enforcement agencies put together and spent on these investigations to come up with some nickel and dime tax charges? Seriously. Michael Cohen pled guilty to things that weren't even crimes. And now they've got allegedly evading taxes on fringies. Wow. Hold the phone, folks. This is going to bring the entire Trump Organization down. It's going to crater, folks. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. My favorite part, though, is if prosecutors could show that this was systematic, they could file more serious charges. You haven't been able to do that up till now? Well, how is it that suddenly you've got these itty-bitty little charges, but, hey, it could be worse, folks. Just wait and see. We might find more. I have a feeling if you couldn't have found it by now, it's not going to be there. I'm just saying. This, in my opinion, this last part about alleging a scheme, that is just the Manhattan DA and Letitia James' office trying to save face. That's the only way I can explain that. Is they're saying, okay, we promised the moon, and we gave you a condo on Fire Island, but it might get better. It might get better. Just hold on and pray for us. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. Once again, they come up completely empty and wind up with penny ante charges to try and make themselves look effective. This is absolutely blood-boilingly infuriating. So keeping with New York, a Pride event in New York City happened. And this weekend, an Egyptian immigrant who had retired from food vending years ago came out of retirement to help his son's pal with a food cart during a pride parade at one of the many New York city parks. And some of the revelers, article from the Daily Wire by, pardon me a moment, by Emily Zanotti, some of the revelers, and that's the word used in the article, not my word, attacked this poor Egyptian immigrant. He's a 65-year-old man. His name's Nader Hassanin. And Nader was at the cart helping his friend's son, his son's friend, and they happened to have an American flag attached to the food cart. And some of the people in the Pride event came up and said, you have to take that down and put up a Pride flag. And they snatched the American flag off the cart and started screaming at the guys to put up a Pride flag. And they said no, and they were attacked, physically attacked. Mr. Hassanin was beaten about the head. He suffered 2 scalp lacerations, a broken nose. He may need surgery to repair it. And they also threw hot sauce in his eyes. I'm so glad gay marriage wasn't a slippery slope. So happy that things turned out to be exactly the opposite of what we predicted. So, NSA and Tucker Carlson. You may have seen a show the other night. Oh, excuse me a moment. I didn't. Oh, that did go out. Oh, the wrong. Shoot. The wrong Trovo notice went out. Told you I was tired. I screwed up the Trovo notice. Anyway, Tucker Carlson had on a show the other night. I believe it was Monday night, that he is being spied upon by the National Security Agency. Now, we're told that the NSA only spies on foreign individuals. Any information that they incidentally capture on Americans is supposedly held off to the side, and they are unidentified. Now, just, person A, person B. Unless, of course, someone with the right clearances decides to have that person, quote-unquote, unmasked. And then their name is far and wide for all to see, for anyone else involved in that same unmasking. And we know that, in fact, during the end of the Obama administration, as it dovetailed into the Trump administration, unmasking was the order of the day. These people unmasked more often than they had Starbucks. Even the ambassador to the UN, her account was used for dozens and dozens of unmaskings, if not hundreds. Of course, she said that it wasn't me, just like Joy Reid isn't the one who published those bigoted and anti-homosexual rants in her blog, and then said that she was hacked in a time warp, and that the FBI was investigating. Of course, none of that was true. But yes, unmasking. So it's quite possible that Tucker Carlson was working on a story with a foreign individual, and they picked that up and started surveilling Tucker Carlson, or they just did it because they wanted to. So Tucker said that the only way the NSA could have the information on him that a whistleblower says they have is if they were directly reading his texts and emails. A whistleblower from the NSA called Tucker and said, I've got this. This is stuff from you that the NSA is collecting. And so Tucker blew the whistle on the show. Last night, he talked about his phone call with the NSA, and he used the word heated several times in describing the phone call. So basically, there was a lot of screaming and yelling going on, I'm sure. And you've seen Tucker with liberal guests. He does not pull punches. And now he's, basically in fear of having his civil rights violated. And he also said that the person from the whistleblower who called him, I can't confirm that person's from the NSA or somewhere else, but the person who called him said that they are collecting this information to try and get his show canceled, to try to get him off the air. So Tucker has filed a FOIA request with the NSA. He's not going to hear anything back, I'm sure. He is also, I shouldn't say going to, but he has the possibility of suing. But Harmy Dillon, the great civil rights attorney, was on his show last night, and she explained that you can sue the NSA and you'll get nowhere. You'll get absolutely nowhere. She has a person, I don't know if they're a client or not, but they've been in a legal struggle with the NSA for about a decade now, and nothing has been done. So fat chance. The NSA tweeted out their side of the story. This is from them. I'm going to read it in full. On June 28, 2021, Tucker Carlson alleged that the National Security Agency has been, quote, monitoring our electronic communications and is planning to leak them in an attempt to take the show off the air, close quote. This allegation is untrue. Tucker Carlson has never been an intelligence target of the agency, and the NSA has never had any plans to try to take his program off the air. NSA has a foreign intelligence mission. We target foreign powers to generate insights on foreign activities that could harm the U.S. With limited exceptions, ergo an emergency, NSA may not target a U.S. citizen without a court order that explicitly authorizes the targeting. Okay, so that's the NSA's take on this. So let's go through a few of the replies from very smart people on this missive from the NSA, quoting Glenn Greenwald's tweet. First, it's bizarre that @NSA Gov allows no replies. Second, NSA has used the same deceit for years. They can spy on U.S. citizens' communications without, quote, targeting the American. Third, NSA has extremely broad authorities to collect communications without, quote, targeting a person. Here's my favorite take on it, though. This is from Hans Manke, or Hans Mank. I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced. But to quote him, this is either poorly drafted or something worse. So, Tucker made two distinct allegations, right? But in this thing from the NSA, it says this allegation. So it's trying to take two allegations and distill them into one. And that is not how it works. You can't use one statement to refute two separate allegations. Second, Carlson called it monitoring. And the NSA said intelligence target. That again, as Glenn Greenwald pointed out, those are not mutually exclusive. And then finally, attempt to take this show off the air. That's what Tucker said. And the NSA's tweet said, we have no plans to try to take his program off the air. Let me quote that properly. Has never had any plans to try to take his program off the air. Again, has never had. Doesn't mean is not planning or may not in the future. So to finish up the tweet, he says, he writes, whether it's poorly drafted or something worse, it's more late-stage Rome stuff. And again, talking about the decline of the Roman Empire because of stuff like this, because of the overreach of the state. So keep an eye peeled on Tucker. Lots coming. Oh shoot, this didn't load yet. I had a story all picked out, but the archive didn't load it yet. I'll try coming back to it at the end, see if it's up. Okay, so as I teased at the beginning, poll numbers for Biden yet again show him slipping heavily. He supposedly still has a 55% approval, according to the RCP average, which is hilarious because he only got about 52% of the vote. But 53% of the vote. But he's still above water. This is a poll from June 11th through the 17th by Reuters and Ipsos. This is an article from Reuters by Chris Kahn. And the June 11th through 17th Reuters Ipsos poll showed that Biden right now has a 55% approval and a 65% approval of his coronavirus pandemic response. But that's as good as it gets. See, the economy is now everyone's most important concern. For a long time, it was healthcare. A long time. But now the economy is in front, according to this poll. Nearly a quarter of adults who were polled call it the most important problem. The majority of Americans are worried about rising living costs, and the public is almost evenly split over how much the government should do to make things better. 48% of respondents said they approved of Biden's handling of the economy, which is down 4% from a similar survey ran in April. The number of Americans who disapproved of Biden's economic record rose 4 points to 43%. So that's a 7-point swing in total from April to June. Just 35% of the country thinks the U.S. economy is headed in the right direction, and 44% say they are very concerned that prices will keep rising. Among Democrats, 78% said they approved of Biden's economic agenda, down 7 points from April, while the number of Democrats who disapproved of his plan rose 6 points to 15%. So there's another 14 or 13% drop when you add those two together. 13% in 2 months. That includes an 11-point drop in approval among Democrats under 40 years old, an 8-point drop in approval among minority Democrats and Democrats without a college degree. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, unemployment within the black community was 9.1% as of May, for example, compared to 5.1% for whites. Unemployment for college degree holders was 3.2% in May, less than half the 6.8% unemployment rate for those with only a high school diploma. Meanwhile, the number of Americans who approved of Biden's stance on gun violence dropped 8 points overall and 11 points among Democrats from April to June. So it's just getting worse and worse for the 46 asterisk administration, folks, and for Biden specifically. The only thing holding him afloat right now is the virus. And with the reactions, I can't say if these are overreactions or underreactions. That would get me kicked off YouTube. But with the reactions that we're seeing right now regarding the Delta variant, it's extremely possible, I won't say likely, but extremely possible that Biden can see his numbers slip even further, especially when it relates to the virus, because a lot of places are at least reinstituting masking guidelines. You now have to wear a mask again indoors in LA County, unvaccinated or not. And Israel and the UK are, I should say Israel is locking down again. And the UK is talking about locking down. So that would be a huge hit to the Democrats if blue states started locking down again. Even if you are a massive masker, if you believe masking is the way to go, period. Getting locked down does not sit well with people once they got their freedom back. Freedom that, in my opinion, should have never been taken away. Looking at you, Greg Abbott. Trin Crier says my video feed on DLive and Gab TV is off. Huh. Huh. It is off. I'm sorry I didn't notice that earlier, Twin Crier. Thank you for letting me know. What's going on here? Hang on a second. Well, I don't live stream on a Gab. I don't even know if you can live stream on a Gab, but I didn't notice that DLive was off. Again, folks, I'm exhausted today. I really am. I'm playing hurt. So let me try fixing the DLive real quickly here. Let me see. I need to go here. I need to do this. Got to do a stupid CAPTCHA. All right. Stream key copy. No, that's the wrong one. Apply, okay. All right, let me try again. All right, give me a moment for that to catch up. Yeah, I'm on Twitch. Good. I'm on YouTube. Good. I'm on Trovo. Good. And there I am. I'm on DLive now. Okay. Weird. Really, really effing weird. All right. Thank you so much, Twinkray. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Again, I'm sorry I missed that earlier. Twitch doesn't give me timestamps on the chat, so I can't guess as to how long that's been up. That's the only things I really don't like about Twitch. How you can't put a timestamp up. Otherwise, it's a great service. It really is. All right. So moving right along. Speaking of polls, got another one out that is bad news for Democrats. Because remember, if you don't have a strong top of the ticket come 2024, your chances of not only not winning the presidential election, but your chances of winning down ballot are greatly decreased. I mean, it's a normal course of action for the party in power in the White House to lose seats in the midterm election after they take office. Very common. And so the Republicans are poised in 2022 to see a great rush to take over the House. The Senate looks good. I'm not saying we'll get 60 seats, but the Senate does look good. We have a lot of great races coming up. We should at least come back in the majority. So good news there. But in 2024, if you don't have a strong top of the ticket, then you just can't pull anybody in for those down ballots. So that's another big problem for the Democrats, because they're going to need someone to beat either a Trump campaign or a DeSantis campaign. Now, right now, DeSantis is well down in the polls versus Trump. Trump still leads every poll when it comes to running for president. DeSantis is number one or number two if you take Trump Sr. out of the equation. DeSantis comes in number two behind Trump Jr. in the latest poll that I saw for president in 2024 if Trump Sr. doesn't run. And there are people who say that putting DeSantis on the ticket as a vice presidential candidate would weaken DeSantis too much, and it would also take a great governor out of Florida, out of a state. I don't know that DeSantis has to worry about term limits. I don't know how Florida works that way. I should look it up, but I think DeSantis would be a very strong vice presidential choice, especially because people would be making Trump's age an issue. Trump will be 78 in 2024, the same age that Biden is now. And Trump, to his credit, has never made an issue of Biden's age, ever. He has always said that people over 80 whom he knows are in great shape. He knows a number of people who say they're better off now than they were 20 years ago, and they're in their 80s. Trump has never made age an issue, and very smartly so. Strategically, it's a brilliant move. But another thing that's killing the Democrats are their positions. More and more people are waking up to the fact that Democrats' stated positions are crap, are absolute crap. Defund the police has become such an albatross around the left's neck that now they're trying to blame Republicans for the defund the police movement. I don't know if you saw yesterday, but there were a number of talking heads, including let me get the adjectives out here. I gotta get the right adjectives. Let me see here. Here we go. A number of talking heads said that the Republicans are responsible for defunding the police because, of course, the Republicans didn't vote for that huge pork passage that had a couple $100 million in it for police, even though none of the cities who are defunding police have said they're doing so because of budget shortfalls. They're doing so because they are under pressure from the far left to do so. So that is a complete spurious argument, but far be it from the Democrats to let the facts get in the way of whatever narrative they're trying to push. But a number of quote-unquote journalists and political figures are saying that it's the Republicans' fault Democrats are defunding cities, even though, the Republicans' fault that cities are defunding police, even though the defund the police movement started last year in earnest. It had begun years before that. That was one of BLM's main talking points, but it didn't pick up steam until after George Floyd died. Then it really took off like a wildfire in the California brush. And the far left, the squad especially, won't stop hammering on the defund the police movement. So now they're saying the Republicans are responsible for it because they didn't vote for that huge pork bill back in February. And my favorite take on it was from our favorite White House press secretary, the arrogant, condescending, dismissive, mendacious, passive-aggressive, patronizing, self-righteous, smug, lying Jen Psaki, who also said it's the Republicans' fault that police are defunded. Wow. 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 By the way, the president, according to Jen Psaki, is also a very proud American who supports third-rate Olympic hammer throwers' rights to wear shocking blue lipstick and protest the American flag during a completely staged photo opportunity, and then claiming that they were set up because they were forced to listen to the national anthem. Jen Psaki said that that's perfectly fine because America hasn't lived up to its ideals. So another loser for the Democrats that's growing is school choice. Their complete hate for school choice. We all know that the Democrats are in the pockets of the teachers' unions, and the fewer children that go to public schools, the less funding they get, because the funding is tied on attendance. And more parents are realizing that the public schools are ruining their children's lives, not enhancing them. And they want a way out. And the Democrats, even though they say they're for the little guy, they're for the minority, they demand that these people send their kids to these rat trap inferior schools. And the only way they can support their argument is to say, well, they need more funding. And I'm sure you've all seen the graph of funding for American public schools over the last 30 years, going up and up. I'm sure it's probably 40 years, going up and up and up and up and up. Meanwhile, test scores are either the same or dip. Exactly zero correlation between increase in funding and test scores. Zero correlation. And with COVID coming out, parents now see what their kids are being taught because they were home, forced to watch their Zoom classes, and they hear all the crap that's being fed into their kids' heads. And many of them have pulled their kids out for good and are opting for homeschooling. Some are going to pod learning, where your kids in the neighborhood get together and they'll meet at a home or a community center, whatever, and have a hired tutor or tutors teach them privately. So you get a group together, and others look for private school, those who can afford it. Not a lot of options that are available, really, to minority and low-income people. So this poll came out from the American Federation for Children, and it's quoting a June poll from Real Clear Opinion Research. I can say it without reading it, but if I try to read it, I screw it up. A June poll from Real Clear Opinion Research. And this is a very robust poll, too. More than 1,762 registered voters were polled, and a majority supported school choice. 74% for versus 16% opposed, while only 10% were unsure. And I've heard people use this phrase before, and I think it's very, very applicable now. How often can you get 74% of Americans to agree on anything? Especially in today's incredibly bifurcated society. 74% for school choice versus 16% opposed and 10% unsure. So even if you add the opposed and unsure together. That's still 4 times plus the number for opposed and unsure versus proponents of school choice. Even better, 70% of Democrats say they strongly or somewhat support school choice. 70% of Democrats strongly or somewhat support school choice. That's more than who agree that Biden's doing a good job. Overall, much more. %69% of independents strongly or somewhat support school choice. So there's actually, within the margin of error, the same number of independents and Democrats who believe in school choice. Republicans, it's 83%. Massive. Also, majority of voters say that some or all of the COVID funds the federal government set aside for K through 12 education should be directed by parents. In other words, they don't want the school boards being the ones who hand out all that money. The parents want themselves to be empowered to use the money as they see fit. Their kids, their school system, their tax dollars, they want to see them spent as they see they should be spent. Again, 66%. Most voters in both parties agree parents should direct all or some of the funding. In fact, that number is 66%. 66% of voters believe parents should have access to COVID stimulus funds for schools. That's massive. And again, opposition to school choice has been a mainstay of the Democrat platform for decades. So they're either going to have to become Republicans or watch this party burn to the ground as people flee in huge numbers. We already saw the big increase in minority voting for Republicans, especially for Trump in 2020. Huge numbers. And with school choice being such a hot topic right now, especially when you see how all the minority communities in big cities were ravaged by quote-unquote Zoom learning, by distance learning, because their kids either didn't have the right electronics, they didn't have enough internet capability, if any, or they didn't even have a tablet. The kid had to use his mom's phone in one instance. I read you that story last month, or earlier this month, pardon me, about a young man who had to use his mom's cell phone for school, but she worked third shift at a casino, and some days she didn't get home until an hour after school had started. So he was missing classes left and right. Not to mention, can you imagine trying to go to school as a young boy on a cell phone screen and paying attention for any length of time? That happened across the country, not just to this one young man. I mean, we won massive gains in South border counties, South border districts in 2020 because of the response, the Trump administration's response to illegal immigration, how they shut down the border. And the first thing the Biden administration did was kill all that. They literally ripped up treaties with Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, allowing a flood of illegal immigrants to leave those countries with no recourse through their governments. And at the same time, they canceled the Remain in Mexico policy to allow asylum seekers, quote-unquote asylum seekers. We all know at least 95% of quote-unquote asylum seekers are not asylum seekers. They are economic migrants. But they flooded in. Last month, 180,000 plus crossed the border. This month and June, the numbers are going to come out next week. The June numbers are going to be even more. And so the border counties in Texas and Arizona in 2022 are going to be hell-bent for leather if the Republicans can keep up the pressure and just show how their communities are being devastated by Democrat policy. Representative Cuellar and Gonzalez, those representatives from Texas, U.S. congressmen, are scared to death that they're going to get voted out of office because they haven't been able to do anything to get this administration to ameliorate the horrific conditions they've created in their districts. They've been screaming since April for this administration to do something. April. And they have done, not only have they done zip, they're doing negative zip, because you may have heard the newest budget proposal takes $1 billion, that's billion with a B, $1 billion out of the Customs and Border Patrol budget. So not only will they not be able to hire more CBP agents, they'll have to fire a bunch. I guess there's going to be a bunch of technical upgrades to the border, and we'll use robots to arrest people. I have no idea. The Democrats are burning themselves to the ground. And they're also asking the taxpayers to pay for more fuel. It's hilarious. It's also scary because they're ruining this country. They're absolutely ruining this country. All right, moving right along. Speaking of the border, you remember not too long ago, there was the viral video of a 9-year-old unaccompanied minor out in the middle of nowhere in South Texas on a access road that happened to be patrolled by a Border Patrol agent. And he came across this young man, no food, no water, no coat. He'd spent at least one night alone in this area. If he hadn't found the road, he probably would have died in a ditch. But the agent found him and saved the kid's life. He was terrified, absolutely terrified. The coyotes cut him loose because they felt he couldn't keep up, and they left him alone. Well, at least, 9-year-old, he could find his way somewhere. He could, get along. It gets worse, folks. It gets worse. Story from the Post Millennial by Brendan Boucher. The image is blurred, but what you have here is a 2-year-old on the side of a road with some snack packages and bottles of water scattered around him, and a bunch of clothing left behind. Seems that he was in the back of a tractor trailer being smuggled through northern Mexico, coming up to the U.S. border. And there were about 100 people, according to some of the survivors, who were packed into this trailer. And one of them died. A 25-year-old just died from heat exhaustion and suffocation. They're all standing. They're all packed next to each other. They're not lying. There's not enough room to lie down. And people started banging on the sides of the trailer to get out. And they finally were heard, and the driver stopped, and a bunch of people bailed. And some of them could not make it past the end of the trailer. They collapsed on the road. They were overcome by heat and exhaustion. Well, one of the other people left behind was a 2-year-old boy. You can see him here in this picture. No shirt. I can't even tell if those are shoes or slippers. Not many 2-year-olds know how to work the cap off a bottle of water, much less can drink from a bottle. Most of them are still using sippy cups, like our president. Thank you, Sean Hannity. Now, this is in Mexico. Mexican authorities picked everybody up. The boy's been placed in Mexico's version of Human Services. But they think the kid's from Guatemala, but they don't know for sure. Immigration officials arrived finding 8 men that were too ill to flee along with the toddler. The men said none of them knew who the parent or guardian of the child is, nor did they know who was. Wait, that sentence doesn't read. I didn't notice that the first time I read that sentence. The men said none of them were the parent or guardian of the child, nor did they know who was. I got it now. Okay, none of them were the guardian, and they don't know anyone who is the guardian. Got it now. Got it. Ray says in the chat, no shirt, no shoes, no service. Ray, but he also wishes me a happy birthday. As my call in the Far Cry 5 game, I'm called Rook, short for rookie. I do not have a name. Actually, I think my name is Jess. I think my name is Jess. But everybody calls me Rookie. By the way, a very, very big apology to everyone who watched the end of today's game stream. It was horrible. Horrible. I promise I will never again do any kind of search and find missions by helicopter or even by truck in real time. I'll try to keep it to just combat missions and side quests. I will avoid the treasure hunts. Today was an absolute goat rope disaster because I kept getting lost. With my memory as bad as it is, I couldn't even remember from 5 seconds ago where I had just looked on the map as to where I was trying to go next. It was a complete and utter disaster. I was absolutely wired up in complete aggravation for an hour after I signed off today, and I couldn't let it go. That's how upsetting it was to me. So I can't imagine how it was for you guys trying to watch that. So again, a big promise: no more of that. No more of that. I'll grab a bunch of side missions, and we'll do that from now on. But not going to happen. Not going to happen. All right, finishing up here. A couple more stories, then we'll have our Babylon Bee, and we're out of here. So also with the border, you remember that Governor Abbott of Texas and Governor Ducey of Arizona just a couple weeks ago asked for help from other states with to send National Guard and law enforcement personnel to their borders to help them plug the gaps that have been left open by Biden canceling the wall. You remember, Mayorkas was given 90 days to review the policy of building the wall and then produce a report. That 90 days was up about 45 days ago. Still haven't heard a word. The only thing we've heard is that they might start construction again. They might. Well, we know if they say they will, the left is going to lose their lunch. Ayanna Pressley will probably start using Rogaine to grow hair so then she can set it on fire. An alopecia joke. Yes, I know. I'm not immune to being mean. But Governor Noem of South Dakota, absolute Republican stud that she is coming through with some National Guard troops. But somehow she's managed to obtain private funding for the troops to go down there for at least a month, if not 2 months, without any of the money coming out of the state budget. Yeah, dog, we covered that in the beginning. Well, I don't want to say that I covered he was released, but he was his conviction was vacated this morning by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and they said he would be released sometime today. So perhaps he's out already. But yeah, I covered that at the beginning of the show. It's really pretty straightforward, actually. A previous prosecutor had determined that there was no case, so the state Supreme Court ruled that that was a binding decision, and they had no right to reinvestigate him and try him. That's basically what it came down to. But anyway, so Governor Noem, she's sending National Guard troops, and it's not going to cost South Dakota a penny. What more can you say, really? I want to go to Mount Rushmore for 4th of July fireworks one of these days. I really do. I heard it's spectacular. And she's waging war with 46 Asterisk right now over his canceling that celebration, because I believe it's the Department of the Interior that's actually in charge of national parks, fireworks displays, and things like that, celebrations. I don't know that for sure, though, but I believe that's the case, because the Park Service is under the aegis of the Department of the Interior. But so anyway, Governor Noem coming through in the clutch. And other states want to help, but not everyone wound up with a budget surplus last year like some red states did after tightening their belts for COVID. So we'll have to see who else is able to respond. But they need help. They need help badly. Abbott's under a lot of pressure to do something because a number of Texans feel that he hasn't acted enough, and he did not act soon enough to fix the border. So we'll have to see how he does there. So as I teased at the beginning of the show, especially with the Babylon Bee article, there was a mayoral primary in New York City this week, and it's all screwed up. It's all screwed up. Seems that the City Board of Elections announced a tally last night, and it was wrong. It was massively wrong. Quoting the New York Times, the Board of Elections conducts rigorous and mandatory pre-qualified testing for every election. It has determined that ballot images used for testing were not cleared from the election management system. It included both test and election night results, producing approximately 135,000 additional records. The board said it has removed all test ballots and re-uploaded and retabulated the election results. The new results are expected to be released early next week. I said mid-month earlier. I apologize. Next week. I thought it was going to be 2 weeks. I had heard 2 weeks somewhere else. So, but I got that wrong. But yeah, that's by Nicholas Sherman from justthenews.com, an excellent news source. So yeah, that's a picture of Eric Adams. He's been in the lead for quite some time. He was the front runner in polling forever, and he is a former NYPD command officer and commander. Actually, I take that back. I think he was brass, but I don't know if he was a command officer per se. But he was higher up than. I think he was at least a lieutenant, but forgive me, that was a while ago. But he's also been investigated quite often. That was one of the things that was used against him in the race, but that didn't stick. Interestingly enough, almost all of the mayoral candidates were calling for increased police presence. Certainly none were calling for fewer police on the streets. Interesting. We talked about the Democrats and defund the police earlier, and there's another example of how much of a losing proposition it is. Also, all of them said that they would not accept an endorsement by de Blasio. All of them. That was pretty hilarious. All right, our final Babylon Bee bookend, and we are out of here again. I apologize for the shorter show. One full night of sleep is not enough to make up for 24 hours of being awake. I'm hopefully tomorrow things will be back to normal. I am planning, of course, of coming back for the game stream tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern. And again, no more hunt and peck missions. We'll do actual fun stuff, and then we'll go on from there. But anyway, Babylon Bee bookend. This is from their health department. Delta variant found to be twice as virulent and blah, 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 whatever. Who cares at this point? Here we have a picture of the dreaded COVID-19 Delta Plus. Carries a K417N mutation, Delta AY1 and Delta AY2 variants. Dateline United States. Scientists now warn that COVID-19 Delta variant is more contagious and also like other stuff about it. Some of them have brought up masks again. I'm sure you're wrapped with attention about all this. Quote, "It's really concerning," said some scientist named, I don't know. Who cares what his name is? Anyway, he went on for a while, but it all boiled down to, it's still the coronavirus, but now you're totally going to catch it for real this time. They are super double serious. So if you're like one of those Karens who loved worrying about this sort of thing, now you have new reasons for that while everyone else goes back to normal. You can yell at people, quote, "You have to be more concerned about the Delta variant, the Delta variant," close quote. And everyone can just kind of nod at you and then ignore you as usual. Anyway, they still say vaccines are effective against it, so I don't even know why we're still talking about this. Seen any good TV shows lately? Babylon Bee, everyone, summing it up for us all. All right, so pray for another night of good sleep, folks. We'll have a full show tomorrow if that's the case. It's always easy for me to game in the morning because that's when my circadian rhythm is on its way up, and so I never have a problem then. But the trick is having it work afterwards. So we'll see what happens. But until the next time, good folks, be well, God bless, happy trails. I'm going to pass out. Bye-bye.
I hope I learned something. I hope I learned something. I hope I learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. the darkest nights. From the sunny